All right, so welcome to episode 117. How are we at 117 already? I have no idea. This is Wool and Spinning. My name is Rachel, and I want to welcome you to this place. Welcome to new viewers who are just trying out the podcast for the first time. I appreciate you spending some time here and having a look around and seeing what we're all about. Welcome to returning viewers. Your support is very much appreciated by continuing to watch the show and enjoying it every I guess bi-monthly, so every other week. And to the patron supporters of the show, thank you so much for your ongoing support that actually keeps the show on the air month after month after month. So thank you to all of you. Today we're going to talk about a Shetland spin that I've been working on. I'm going to show you some woven samples that I've been working on. I've got a new spin on the wheel that is I've got a bit of a time crunch with it. I can't really say why, but it's I thought I would talk about it regardless because it's a beautiful spin. And we've got some breeding color studies, and we also have some discussion in spinning growth about crepe yarn. So we're going to get into the show without further ado. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the show. I have a couple of announcements to make, and we don't really have much housekeeping today. So I thought that I would do a small just announcement at the beginning of the show. For those who have offered their support already to Katrina and I for our book, Unbraided, I wanted to say thank you so much. It is out and available now. The links are in the show notes, so you can go to patreon.com/wellfordpearls, or you can go to wellfordpearls.com and click on Unbraided. It's at the top of the website, and the links are all there for ordering. They're on the Crafty Jacks website, craftyjacks.ca, and it's JAKS for Jacks. And all the links are there for the ebook or for the hard copy, whatever you guys would like. This is a soft cover. When I say hard copy, I mean like the physical book, because it is a soft cover book. So thank you to those who have already ordered. I really appreciate it. Many people should be receiving or have already received their pre-orders if they ordered a book ahead of time. Those copies were signed by Katrina and I, and yeah, just thank you so much. So that's the book. I have been delving into my Ply magazine stash, I guess you could call it. So next month in June, we're going to be exploring semi yarns in our 51 yarn spin along that we're doing this year in the Patreon group, in the Ravelry group, and on the Slack channel. And so I actually pulled this out the other day, and I've been reading through it, and I've written most of the stuff for the content for next month because there's some other stuff going on in the background that I'm not quite ready to talk about yet. But it's been really interesting because going back and rereading this issue has been really kind of fun. It's reminded me of some stuff that I had sort of not forgotten about, but just don't use all the time. And it's just really fun. I think the whole idea behind Ply magazine being a magazine that you would archive and keep, whether you have the digital copies or the physical copy, because of the better quality paper and just the size of it and the layout and everything, I really enjoy going back and reminding myself of articles from the past that were written and people that contributed that I don't necessarily run across online all the time. And yeah, it's been really neat to go back and look through, because every month I've been, for the 51 yarn spin along, I've been pulling out issues that are pertinent to that month's yarn, and this really reminded me this month because I hadn't looked at this one since it first came out, because this is from autumn of 2017, so it's it's 2 years old coming up, and I hadn't looked at it for basically since it arrived in the mail. So really fun. My husband Mike also gave me this book. My friend Kelsey had recommended it to me. It's called Next Steps in Weaving, and I've been slowly reading it. It's by Patty Graver, and it's just got a ton of information in it, and I literally am reading it front to back. I think what I'm going to do, and I was talking to my friend Megan about this, and I'm not sure if she's in the chat yet. I see Karma and Charlotte. I see Becca and Diane. I don't see Meg just yet. But her and I were talking about maybe working through this book from front to back and just working through all of the patterns and doing some basically weaving samples, because the book is just chocker block full of these samples, and she gives you the drafts for each of them, and then all of the theory about all of the different patterns. And so Meg and I were talking in the Slack channel about maybe working through a weave along together, just informal together, and working through this book, because my friend Kelsey did that, and she said it really helped her to understand weaving structure and fabric structure, which is definitely what I am looking for. So I will keep you posted on that. If anybody has done that, I would love to hear from them. Oh, Megan, there you are. Yeah, so I was just talking about you and I possibly working through this book together. So really cool stuff. There's such neat resources out there now. You know what I mean? Like when I first came back to knitting after university, and I mean, when I was growing up and doing some of this stuff and sewing and knitting and whatnot, there just wasn't an online community. Like the internet it existed, but not like it does now. And it's really neat now because I feel like we're in this age where there's just so many resources. You know, there's schools and there's people doing podcasts and there's, you know, and it's not just the online stuff. It's the bringing people together in community and creating these like online forums and people to share ideas, you know, places like Ravelry and our Slack channel for the wool and spinning community, and just bringing people together to share ideas and share community together, and then taking those ideas and kind of running with them, but also having a place to share. And I just feel like our experiences now are so rich, you know. And we were chatting in a group of us got together this past weekend, some friends. We were saying goodbye to a friend who's moving to Alberta, and we were talking about the fact that, you know, a lot of different generations are online more than other generations, and you know, a lot of us are finding community in these online places and these online forums because we don't necessarily have a big in-person community. Or like, you can't take, for example, your floor loom to your friend's house to have coffee and weave for the afternoon. I mean, maybe you could if you had like a David, the small David, but it's difficult. So we were just talking about that. And I just am so thankful for all of these resources that are available to us, you know, books, digital books, online courses, etc. No, Eve, we're just getting started. I was just sharing some publications that I just got in the days off, in my weeks off. All right, I just had to moderate in the comments again. I feel like YouTube, I might be wrong, but I feel like in the live stream, YouTube has because they've a lot of companies have, if you guys have maybe noticed, a lot of companies are changing their privacy policies and whatnot recently, and so I'm finding that more and more I'm having to moderate stuff that I didn't have to moderate before. So if you post something in the live chat, if you're part of the Patreon community and you're here for the live stream and you post something and it doesn't come up right away, it's probably because I have to moderate it. So it just seems like I'm having to moderate a lot more than I used to have to. And I think it's because YouTube is picking up on certain things and they just think that it's like a sketchy comment, even though it's just somebody sharing something. So, all right. Charlotte says, it says, I remember when the only resource was 2 pages at the back of a knitting magazine, and then plus our moms. That's so true. I remember getting some of the early, when I first came back to knitting, I remember getting like Interweave Knits for the first time, and the other knitting magazines didn't exist. It was really only Interweave Knits that was out and being published. And I remember looking in the back to try to figure out like how to cast off and how to do, you know, different things. So yeah, it's true. There wasn't, you know, YouTube to just go and like type in, you know, how to cast off in knitting. So definitely things have changed. All right, let's talk about the breed and color studies. I'm going to switch the cameras around. Fingers crossed it doesn't crash. If it does, please just sit tight. Well, that was seamless. All right, so let's talk about breed and color studies. We are into breed and color studies now. Everything's kind of gone out, and I wanted to share some of the stuff that people have been working on. So this is Loop Care, which is Carolyn. She took the kit and she carded up her roll eggs with white, and she's going to spin them. These are from Bridget Flynn, who's Bridget on Ravelry, and she spun the singles on her thimble, and she ended up, so she spun the white singles, and then she also spun black, and she's ended up with over 500 yards of singles from the Dorset, just from the roll eggs. So I'm very curious to see what she does with them, because that's a lot of yarn. Rebecca is actually playing along from her stash. So she carded up a whole bunch of roll eggs with white. And you guys will recognize these colors. They are from our breed and color studies that was the summer last year. So it's the Targhee that she's playing with. And then this is Megan. She's making a whole bunch of crazy bats. So people are finishing up some of their yarns really quickly, and other people are just getting started with their fiber prep. Some people are working with both the roll eggs and the kits, and some people are doing something totally different and they shopped from their stash. It's really cool to see the breed and color studies as it has evolved and as it's changed, how people have begun to, at least from my perspective, have begun to really own this study as their own. I think when we first started, people tended to kind of follow along. Some people saved their fiber, some people worked with it sort of throughout the study, but not necessarily right away. And I'm finding now people are jumping in really quickly, they're sharing their stuff really quickly, and they're really trying stuff, and there's a word I'm looking for. They're really using it as a source of inspiration and a jumping point rather than sort of waiting to see what other people are doing, which I think is amazing. I think it speaks to the confidence of our spinners in our group, that they're wanting to take more risks and put themselves out there and outside of their comfort zone and try things. And then also I think it's speaking to some of us who came to the Ravelry group and came to this community as relatively new spinners, and it's the progress that people are making as they go along their journey of becoming a more experienced spinner. Because even if you came being an intermediate spinner, some people now are really, like, I would consider a bunch of people in our community are like, they're really experienced spinners now. They're spinning amazing yarn and doing amazing things. So it's very, very, very cool. Yeah, so I wanted to share that stuff with you and just show you sort of where people are at and how they're kind of jumping off already and getting going with their stuff. People have received their fiber, and there are some people who have completely, like Bridget, they've completely finished spinning, so which is just amazing. So I hope that we continue to see people posting in the Ravelry group and posting their photos. There is a devoted thread in the Ravelry group to people posting their photos and discussing what they're doing with their breed and color study, and it is linked in the show notes. So you can see the show notes again at wellforpearls.com or at patreon.com/wellforpearls. I was going to mention this study is for everyone. You do not have to be a patron to be a part of this. We're just studying Dorset and carded prep. So if you have some Dorset or some down fiber in your stash and you want to play along, hop in and spin along with us. This study goes till the end of September. All right, let's talk about some works in progress. I'm going to change my cameras around, and I'm hoping that I don't lose you guys. Let's turn that back on. Nope, that's not what I want. Hang on. There we go. All right. I actually changed a whole bunch of my settings on here. Oh, hi Greta, it's so good to see you. I changed a bunch of my settings on here to accommodate some of the things that I changed around with my cameras and whatnot a few months ago, and I'm still getting used to Open Broadcaster, which is which. And then of course I'm always paranoid that I'm going to lose you guys. So, oh, hi Martha, it's good to see you. Oh, so Charlotte just said in the live chat, I'm just catching up with live chat. She says, I can't believe we are together from all over the world. Wow. That is part of the reason why back when I started podcasting and I decided to put the podcast on Patreon, it was a decision that I made over about 6 to 9 months because I really waffled back and forth about whether I wanted to do that. But one of the things that I really wanted to do was to get this live stream going. And the reason was because I just thought that the coolest thing about the spinning community, the weaving community, the knitting community, the making community in general, because now I'm stocking a whole bunch of sewing patterns right now because I can't find any clothes that fit. So I'm going to make some stuff. Everybody's all over the world and we're all doing this stuff and our interests are the same in the sense that we're sort of trying to walk this handmade path, whatever that is for everybody. But we're also spread out. And this is a great way to bring everybody together. So I'm really glad that people in the community are feeling that too and feeling thankful for that. All right, let me get my work in progress. So this is from Katrina. Some of you will recognize this colorway. This is called Lava Love. I took the braid. So this is the spin that I mentioned at the beginning that I'm kind of spinning under pressure right now. I need to get it done as quickly as possible. And I'm actually only spinning half of the braid for now. And then I'm going to work on the other half after my deadline is up. So this is her Panda base, which is superwash merino bamboo nylon. It's a 60-30-10 mix. And I took the fiber. So this is going to be the second skein that I spin. So I took the fiber, I stripped it down, I divided it in half, and then this is going to be a bobbin and this is going to be a bobbin. So I didn't weigh it, I just stripped it down. So I stripped it lengthwise, took it down like this, and just divided it down like this way. And I started spinning from this one here, which you can tell is quite a bit smaller now because it's almost done. And I'm actually spinning over the fold. So I've been taking a staple length at a time and just folding it over my finger and spinning it over the fold and just off the top, not off the tip. So it's creating this sort of semi-worsted yarn. It's from a worsted prep and then sort of a woolen type I'm totally drawing a blank. A woolen type draft, I guess you could say. And spinning it off the top, but smoothing the fibers while I go. So it's worsted. It's a worsted prep. I would consider this a worsted yarn. We've been talking a lot lately about like how to label your yarns. So this is definitely a semi-worsted prep for me. The colors are incredible. So this was one of Katrina's very first colorways that she developed. And this one was called Lava Love. And it's just these gorgeous, gorgeous colors. And she spun, and actually, I don't know if I could find it, but she spun this yarn up for socks for her girls. And let me see really quickly while I'm talking if I can find it. And she did a fractal, I think. And what was so cool about it was that nowhere in the yarn, like in the entire skein, nowhere did the three singles match up. Like I don't think it was a fractal. I think it was just a traditional 3-ply, because in a fractal they would have matched up. So I'm pretty sure that it was that it was not just, but that it was a traditional 3-ply, and nowhere in the yarn did the three singles match up in color. She had places that were like orange, red, and yellow, so it looked like it was matched up, but they weren't actually the same. It was such a cool yarn. Sorry for coughing. Let me see if I can find it. It was just beautiful. I don't think she has a photo of it. Darn. On her handspun page. I'm sure it's somewhere on her Instagram profile, but it was such a cool yarn. Yeah, she doesn't have it in her Ravelry thing. Oh, just watch. Now I'm going to start coughing. Hi, Erica. Hi, Rihanna. It's good to see everybody. I just love seeing everybody in the Slack channel. Or sorry, in the in the Instagram, in the pop-up chat. Yeah, she doesn't have it on her project page. I'm sure it's just one of those things that she made and forgot to post. But it was just the coolest yarn, and she divided it up into 3, like this. She had 3 bobbins, and I think she just stripped it down and kept spinning until and then she made the 3-ply. And like I said, nowhere did it match up, and it was just so beautiful. So when I asked her if I could have some fiber for this project that I'm working on, I'm sorry I have to be so cryptic, but I will tell you what it's for eventually. She asked me what I wanted, and I said, why don't you just surprise me? Like, I'm happy with whatever. And this is what she gave me, and I thought, yes, because then I could start spinning it. So this is the bobbin. I actually pulled the bobbin off of my wheel to show you the singles because they're so beautiful. So what's happening with the singles, because I'm spinning over the fold, is that they're very, very heathered. And I don't know if I hold it closer, if you can really see. I know the live stream isn't super, super crisp. That's something actually that we're going to work on over the next year, is to see if we can make the live stream even crisper and up the internet. Gamers use one, like they usually use like their webcam, and then they have the game streaming in the background. This is unusual in the sense that I've got 2 cameras going, and the bandwidth that I need to get that up onto the internet, it takes a lot. And so it's not the most crisp picture when you're watching the live stream, but I know you can get the gist of it. But you can see how heathered it is, and all that color twisting right in, especially in the yellow there probably. It's so pretty. And the ply back test, if I can find the end, just creates this most amazing yarn. So this isn't as tightly plied as it was. It's not active because it's been resting overnight, but this is kind of like what it's making in terms of yarn. So I twisted it by hand. Isn't that amazing? All that heathering in there. So that's what the 2-ply would look like if I was going to leave it as a 2-ply. But I will say that this is going to be a 3-ply. So I'll tell you more about this yarn and this spin once I'm able to reveal more. But I thought I would show you because it's just, oh, it's just spinning up so beautifully and so easy. Like just spinning over the fold, staple length by staple length, you know. There's nothing fancy in terms of like, you know, really, really super fancy spinning. It's just, you know, short forward, off the top, smoothing it down. It's just really, really pretty. So I wanted to share that with you guys because even though I have to be a little bit cryptic about how I speak about this project, I wanted to share it with you because I'm excited about it. The fiber content is 80-30-10. No, 60-30-10 superwash merino bamboo nylon. A lot of indie dyers call it panda. So, and it's because of the bamboo content. So I've been trying to spin through all of my stashed fiber that has nylon in it and all of my stashed fiber that's superwash, because now that it's kind of it's bittersweet. Now that we don't have dogs anymore, our house is so much cleaner. I was saying to my mom, so my parents have been in Japan for the last 6 weeks. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, I cleaned out like the whole main floor of the house. I washed the baseboards. I washed the back of a whole bunch of our furniture that hasn't moved for the last like 5 to 10 years, and really had a big clean out. And I just like cleansed the house of all of the dog hair. And it's really amazing because Charlotte especially, she had a massive coat. She was just dusty all the time. So even if we combed her out, we got her groomed really super regularly so she didn't overheat. Like even with really great dog maintenance, I used to call it, she still just tracked in a lot of dust. And when it was the 2 of them, even when Charlie was getting sick and wasn't really moving as much, because hindsight's 2020, I can see how he was deteriorating for a lot longer than we sort of realized. And they just tracked in a lot of dust. And then they had a huge undercoat because they were golden retrievers. They were purebred golden retrievers. And they would blow their coats all the time because here in this part of the world, we're getting more and more weather where we'll have a cold snap, and then we'll have a hot snap, and then we'll have a cold snap. And they're not like the Chinooks that places like Calgary get, but we're kind of starting to get that type of weather. So the dogs were constantly blowing their coats, and I just don't need my socks to be machine washable anymore. Like if I have a whole bunch of socks that are made from 100% wool, which is the direction that I want to go in, I don't need to have fiber that needs to go in the washing machine anymore. Like our house is just a lot cleaner. So I'm going to be sort of shifting. So I've got that bin. I went through it in a an episode. I can't remember what number it was, but I remember I went through an episode and I said, oh, do you guys want to see I pulled all my superwash fiber out of my stash. Do you guys want to see it? And I did a bit of a show and tell, which is really unusual for this show. But I showed you what was left. That bin is getting really low, which is great. But when that's gone, it's gone. So I've been sort of, basically, thinking about what I want fibers for socks for later, like for the future, as I make more socks. Because we do a lot of Patreon content about socks. It seems to be something that we're all really super interested in. Can I tell you if it's going to be published? This stuff? Are you talking about this spin that I'm doing right now? If it's going to be published? Is that what you mean, Eve? I have one double-coated collie, and he's bad enough. By the time you add the 2 wire-haired Jack Russell Terriers into the mix as well. Yeah, totally. I'm getting too warm. I need to take my sweater off. Goldens are like corgis on steroids. Yes. Oh my goodness, Goldens are so bad for their undercoat. It's just amazing. All right, I'll just wait for, I think Eve means about this spin, if it's going to be published. I grew up with dogs and couldn't imagine a house without, but as the grown-up, I cannot make myself add more work to our family workload with a dog. That's exactly it. Like, I really miss having a dog, and I feel like our house is very empty, but it is nice. And the stage and age that the kids are at, it's definitely simplified our life in a lot of ways. And so there's a part of me that's actually really thankful that we had the dogs and that we had that time in our life, but I'm also really thankful for the time that we're in now. So I'm trying to come at it from a place of gratitude rather than a place of complete and total grief, if that makes sense. So it's hard. So Eve says, yes, your super secret project, winky face. So yes, it will be published. And the only reason why I'm being a little bit cryptic about it is because it's not something that's for Patreon and for woolen spinning. It's a project outside of my stuff. So I feel like I just need to be a bit strategic around how I share it. So, but yes, it will be published. So this is my Shetland yarn. I think last time I was still plying and I hadn't quite gotten to the point where I was ready to share the yarn with you. So this is Disdarrow Ranch. It's the Shetland that I was spinning, that I have the big bump of. I gave some of it away on the show, and I've been spinning away on my Lendrum. And what I've been doing is I actually left my Lendrum, just my standard flyer, on, and I put my fast flyer on my standard head. And I've just been spinning at, I think, 15 to 1. It's not the highest. I'm not spinning at 17 to 1. I think I'm spinning at 15 to 1. I left my sample card upstairs, my control card. I make these all the time, and I write down like what I'm doing. And I left it upstairs because, with my cold and everything, I'm not completely on the ball. And I've just been working on it like in the evenings as I can, and I've been taking the roving and I've just been wrapping it around my hand. Like I said last show in episode 116, I've just been wrapping it around my hand, and when I kind of have like a fistful of fiber wrapped around my hand, then I just pre-draft it and then I just spin it. And I've been spinning sort of this semi-woolen, it's a woolen prep, and then I'm spinning it in a sort of more worsted fashion. So I'm sort of doing a short backward. I'm very lightly, very gently smoothing the fibers. So I would call this a semi-woolen yarn, but the singles are definitely, and the yarn definitely feels like a woolen yarn for sure, but it has a little bit more structure to it because I'm smoothing those fibers and taking a little bit of that air out as I spin. I have to say, I love this yarn. I think this might be some of my most favorite yarn that I've ever spun. And originally I was just going to spin from through the whole bump and make all of this yarn be like this. And I wasn't gonna sort of make a whole bunch of different yarn. I was just gonna do this, and then I was gonna weave it all up into either a massive blanket or a massive piece of fabric. My mom offered today, so my mom has my mom's a beautiful sewer, and she used to make a lot of our clothes when we were growing up, and she's a beautiful quilter. And if you've ever been to our house, you have seen the quilts in all throughout our house. And my mom knows that she's not going to use her serger anymore, and I've borrowed it off and on over the years, but it's currently not working. It just needs to be serviced. It needs a new knife. And she said to me today, because birthdays and Christmas are really difficult for gift giving in our family, because A, everybody has everything, B, nobody wants anything, and C, it's really hard to get together as a family and celebrate because we're all going in different directions all the time. And so my mom said that for my birthday, she's like, why don't I give you I'll service and get the serger running and you can have it. I was just like, are you serious? I would love that. Thank you. Because she doesn't want to make clothes anymore and she's not using it. It's just sitting there. And so my original plan was to weave up this massive piece of fabric and then I would sew with it. And I was thinking about making like some sort of a coat or a jacket. One of those like cocoon coat cardigan jacket thingies. And now, because I love this yarn so much, I'm still thinking about doing that, but I don't think that I need the entire bump because it's like a massive bump of fiber. I'm actually thinking that I might do some sampling and see what this is like as a 3-ply as well. And I might knit a sweater as well, because this alone, this skein is 500 yards. So, and I think when I calculated it out, I think it's a sport weight, but it also is, I think it could pass for a heavy fingering if you knit it a little bit more dense, which you would want to, because for wear and tear, you would want, for a sweater, you'd want to knit it a little bit tighter. So it would sort of knit up probably on like 3.5 millimeter needles, maybe 3 millimeter needles. But the reason why this got me thinking was because I did these little woven samples. And this one, I was fresh plied yarn. So I had plied the yarn, but I didn't wash it. I didn't finish it. I just skeined it. And then a couple of days later, I came back and I wove this sample. And this sample is of the yarn having been washed and finished and sampled. So you know how there's kind of this myth out there around weaving yarns that they have to be finished, or sorry, that they shouldn't be finished. If you're weaving with your hand spun, you shouldn't finish the yarn. You should just weave with it, not fresh off the bobbin, but like you don't wash it and finish it and full it and do all that kind of stuff. Just weave with it and then wash the item afterward. And there's lots of opinions out there one way or the other. And I think you can make an argument both ways. I think both arguments are probably quite valid. So I thought I'm just going to start testing it out. Like I'm just going to start doing samples for all of my hand spun stuff, one unfinished and one finished, and then finish them both in the way that I would finish the fabric if it was a woven piece of fabric, and see if there's any difference. So I have a couple of thoughts. They're both exactly the same, finished. So they've been washed, fulled, and I put them both in the dryer to dry. They're exactly the same. If I didn't have this white tag on here, I would have no idea which was which. No idea. They're exactly the same. Now, I did these on my Zoom Loom, my Shacked Zoom Loom, which is the little pin loom. It's about 4 inches by 4 inches. And the yarn that wasn't finished, so it wasn't fulled first, that's this one. It wasn't fulled first, it wasn't finished, it wasn't washed, there was no eucalyptus. The yarn was just fresh off the wheel. I think this yarn was easier to weave with, I think. I'm not totally sure. I need to keep testing and keep trying, but I think that it was easier to weave with. It didn't feel as poofy and as full as the finished yarn, because this yarn did poof up a little bit. It really filled in the spaces. There's a lot of air in this yarn. I suspect the grist is quite high. I need to still calculate that. And I found it, because it was fresh off the wheel and freshly plied, it was still a little bit more compacted. And I felt like, and I would love to hear Erica of Weevolution chime in here, I felt like the yarn was stronger. I might be wrong, but when I did the tug test, it felt stronger. This yarn, when I was weaving with it, the yarn had been washed and finished, and it felt like it filled in the spaces more quickly. So it felt like, because the yarn had been washed and finished and had kind of, you know, done its coming back to life thing that it does when you send it for a swim in the sink with a little bit of eucalyptus, it felt like the yarn filled in those spaces right away. Whereas with this one, you could see more negative space until I washed it. The other thing was, it didn't feel as strong. It felt like if I really pulled, I could have broken the yarn. So I wonder if maybe for weaving, this yarn, possibly if I'm going to wash it and finish it before I weave with it, needs to be fulled a little bit. But then after the finishing and after washing, they're exactly the same. They feel the same. They look the same. The negative space is the same. I can lift them up and you can see some of that negative space back in there where the light is hitting. I can even hold them up here. There's one. They look exactly the same. See? No difference. They feel the same. Really nice drape. Yeah. So very interesting. There is a lot going on in chat right now, so I'm just going to catch up because I feel like I might miss something. Oh, that's a good idea. Concert tickets to my parents-in-law because they do not need or want any more things. And they're in the process of downsizing. That's a great idea. Just catching up. Sorry, guys. Just give me a quick sec. Ask if there's a difference in the weaving experience. My weaving tutor doesn't like to weave with poofy yarns. This wasn't obviously done on the table loom, and it certainly wasn't done on the floor loom because that's not coming until the summer. But it just on the Zoom Loom through that needle, because with the Zoom Loom you weave with quite a big long needle. I felt like if I pulled really super hard, it would have broken the finished yarn. But again, would I actually have been able to break it? I don't know. And so far, this is the first yarn that I've ever woven with that hasn't been washed and finished. So this is just my first experience, and it's something that I really want to explore because it's something that's talked about constantly. Beautiful samples, I agree. Lots of strong opinions about what to do. Your experiments are a great way to see which way works for you. Totally, Erica. I completely agree. It's strange you say that square was easier because the other one looks more flat. That one looks like it has more memory or something. Yeah, I don't know. It may just be the cameras, because to be honest with you, they're exactly the same. Like looking at them in real life, they're exactly the same. There are some areas of one of them, I think it's this one, where there was some really, really, you can see it right in here where my finger is, right? I don't know if you actually can. There was some yarn right in there that was really, really thin. It got really, really thin spinning for a while. And so the samples aren't as consistent as my finished yarn is. Because I find the first 2 or 3 yards of every spin that I do, whether because of the singles, that part of the skein is always more inconsistent than the body of the skein. Does that make sense? So the first couple of yards and the last couple of yards are always more inconsistent than like the vast majority of my yarn. And I think a lot of that is when you're first starting spinning, first of all, the bobbin is empty. So you have a different pull, different tug on the bobbin. So you're adjusting your tension, getting used to the fiber. Maybe you're doing a little bit of sampling. And then at the end, you're rushing because you're getting to the end and you know you're down to those last few yards. So I do think there's a little bit of that going on in this for sure. Because I was just taking it off of the end of this. I just put this on my umbrella swift and I just pulled what I needed off of it. So anyways, this is just a long-term work in progress. It's going to go on for a while. I'm sure I'm still going to be talking about this project in the fall. I'm under no, what's that word? I think it's going to take me a while. because it's meant to be a process spin. It's not meant to be a product spin. So if I can learn some things along the way, that's great. And if it gets a little bit rote and a little bit kind of routine after a while, and it's just a matter of going through the motions after a while, and it's just a moving meditation type spin, that's totally fine. Okay, under no illusions. Thank you, Eve. See, what would I do without you guys? I don't know. I don't know how I recorded the podcast before you guys were in the chat. Like, I look back at some of those episodes, I'm just like, it would have been so much easier if there had been if chat had been there. Okay, I'm going to switch cameras around. Hopefully I don't lose you guys. All right, this is a very interesting discussion. This is Spin and Grow. This was posted by Ian Alay. I don't exactly know how to say your Ravelry name, and unfortunately when you go to your profile, there's no name. So we are going to talk about this yarn and talk about her growth. Now, she wrote a lot about this yarn, and so I really wanted to share this with you guys. And I want to preface this by saying that these yarns, these crepe yarns and cabled yarns and all these different yarns that change direction and have multiple things going on in the structure to make them what they are, can be really complicated. And as newer spinners, it can get really confusing sort of as to what you're supposed to do. And I just love that these yarns are gaining popularity, because I think as spinners, we're really learning a lot about how far we can push our fibers and how far we can push ourselves as spinners. And really, our imagination is the limit. So I really appreciate people hopping into the Spin and Grow thread on Ravelry and sharing their projects that maybe didn't go quite as they had planned, and then giving us an opportunity as a community to reflect on it and sort of, hopefully make some changes for next time to get some different results. It doesn't mean that we failed or that we did anything wrong. It just means that there's always room for improvement. So this isn't meant to be a criticism. For those of you who haven't tuned into the show in the last little while and don't know what spinning growth is, the idea is to grow and to learn from our spinning. And we're coming at this from a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset of this is terrible and I'm never going to get any better. We want to come at it as I can't do this yet, and this is how I'm going to practice to get better. So before I start coughing again, all right, I just checking chat. There's always stuff going on in chat. All right. She wrote a lot, and I have a lot to read. So I thought what we would do is just sort of tackle it in chunks so that I'm not just sitting here reading out this big long thing and I lose you guys. So this is the first paragraph of what she wrote, and like I said, we'll just kind of we'll just sort of work through it together. So she writes, I tend to spin by feel. Does it feel twisted enough? Does it look plied enough? Then I count off treadles and drafts for consistency. It does mean I tend to underply as yarns relax after bathing. So that all is sort of self-explanatory, but I think that one of the things that's really important to take a moment and take a pause here and talk about is this idea of spinning by feel. I spin by feel the majority of the time. And I think people might be really surprised to learn that about me, but one of the reasons that I spin by feel is because I know what I'm looking for and I know what I want from my yarns. And so in general, now as I'm becoming more and more experienced, I can go back and I can do twists per inch, and I can do, treadles per, drafts per the number of treadles that I want, and I can create those types of yarns. And it's really important, I think, as we progress in our spinning experience, that we do learn how to do that. But I think it's also really important to remind ourselves as to why we spin and why we potentially weave or knit. And a lot of it is for the moving meditation and for the opportunity to get into that zone of relaxation. And I think that's really important, and it's okay if we spin by feel. Now, she mentions that this means that she tends to underply. So for those who are spinning by feel and you're finding that you tend to underply your yarns, that used to happen to me all the time, especially when I was a newer spinner and I didn't particularly care if I was creating a specific type of yarn for a specific project, because I was just trying to learn. Something you might want to think about doing is just going up on your ratio, going to a higher ratio, because if you go to a higher ratio and you tend to zone out and you go into this sort of this, you know, mindfulness sort of moving meditation kind of place, your yarns won't be underplied because you'll still have adequate twist going into your yarns. And, you know, I find for myself, and I've found this in my students, when you go into that kind of moving meditation kind of place, your feet tend to slow down. And that's why the yarns end up underplied. So it's just a thought. It may or may not be helpful, but just in general, when you're spinning for just the pure enjoyment of spinning and the feel of it, and you're not looking for like a specific outcome, and you don't need to be uber present, just go to a higher ratio and you won't underply your yarns, and you can kind of just let yourself go into that place. It's one of the reasons why I spin on such high ratios, is because I do tend to zone out. And it's because I need that quiet time and I need that downtime. Okay, so then she goes on to say, I was aiming for a high twist yarn for increased durability. And Rachel has described her high twist 2-ply sock yarn in the down issue of Ply. So I tried to follow those numbers and spin the singles at 11 twists per inch. So before we go on, she goes through a whole thing as to how she created that. But I want to say, I was spinning a down. I think she mentions here that she was spinning a south down. So similar fibers. But her plan was to spin a crepe yarn, and I was spinning traditional 2-ply and traditional 3-ply for that article. So the numbers don't necessarily match, and the numbers don't necessarily go all the way across. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to match somebody else's yarn. That the numbers don't necessarily work if you're going to change your structure. And here she's changing her structure. So because she's going to be spinning singles in one direction and then a third single in another direction and then plying those together, that's a different structure than, say, a traditional 2-ply or a traditional 3-ply. With crepe yarns especially, and cabled yarns are the same, you need a lot of twist. And so what you think is high twist is actually not high twist. You need even higher twist. So you need yarns that are very, they almost kind of feel ropey in the singles, and they really twist back on each other a lot, and they tend to almost be a little bit unpleasant to ply because there's so much twist in them. So just keep that in the back of your mind. All right. Rachel's ply twist was 8 twists per inch. That meant my 2-ply needed to be 16 twists per inch to balance out the final crepe of 8 twists per inch. But this felt super, super twisted, which it needs to. And the ply back test was also over twisted. But again, you need it to be over twisted. The treadling was so much more than I'd done for other yarns that even when taking the doubled twist into consideration, I ended up distrusting the math and going by feel, lowering the twist to about 12 twists per inch. The ply back made a nicer cabled structure at that twist. The final crepe ply was around 6 twists per inch. This is very, very technical, all of this math. And for those who want to delve into this more, you can go to the Ravelry group and find this post and you can discuss all of this. But basically, she's doubling, her original plan was to double the ply twist from what I had used in that article in the Ply magazine. And then her final crepe yarn was going to be roughly 8 twists per inch, but in the end she used 12 twists per inch, and her final crepe yarn ended up being 6 twists per inch. And as you can see, the yarn is underplied. So she says here it felt super, super twisted, and the ply back test was also over twisted. So that goes to show you that sometimes we can start really, you know, second guessing ourselves about some of this stuff when we get really, really technical and we don't just trust the process. I think this is a great example where this would be an opportunity to possibly step back if you're really wondering if it's the right way to go and the right thing to do. Do a sample, you know, stop yourself, you know, and take some of that yarn and just ply it and make a 3 or 4 yard sample. Oh, I have to review a comment. Look at that. Spindle spinning is almost all by feel. It's nothing to excuse yourself over. Yeah, it's so true, Becca. I really agree with that. hard to count whirl twists. Yeah, it very, very much so. I think spindle spinning is one of the things that really made me a better spinner. I think I learned a lot about my yarns that I was creating by going from the wheel back to spindles, if that makes sense. And I really appreciate now when I'm at my wheel the yarns that I can create on my spindles, and the fact that it's all pretty much all done by feel and done by choosing that weight of spindle and trusting the process and seeing it through. Rihanna says texture and feel is one of the big reasons I love fiber. I don't think it would keep my attention so thoroughly if it didn't engage all my senses and my intuition as well as my mind. I totally agree. And I think that that's one of the things that, one of the reasons why when people come to spinning from knitting, I think it really releases something in people that helps them to put together all of these big knowledge gaps that as knitters we don't realize that we necessarily have. And for some, they don't necessarily want to go there, and that's totally fine, no judgment. But for some of us who are looking for that more technical understanding of our yarns and the fabrics that our yarns make, I think spinning really starts to help with putting some of that stuff into, like, this is how it plays out in real life. You know, if you do X, Y will happen. And I think it really helps. And then, you know, if you do X on X fiber and Y happens, but if you do X on B fiber, you know, Z will happen. And I think many of us really feel like our knowledge just goes, I mean, sometimes I just feel like my brain's going to blow up. But I also really appreciate that because I can start to really tailor what I make and the yarns that I make to the sweaters that I make. Like, for example, that Shetland. You know, the first thing I said was I probably would make this a 3-ply if I was going to make a sweater. You know, why do I say that? Well, I want increased durability. I want a tighter ply twist so that the yarn is a lot denser and heavier wearing. The 2-ply isn't going to wear as well as the 3-ply. It's a rounder yarn, so I could look at maybe doing some cabling, choose a sweater with some cabling in it. It's our understanding of that structure that helps us to grow. Spinners often shy away from making the ropey singles necessary for these more complex structures. Absolutely. And I think that's something, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to do this spinning growth, because we kind of skipped ahead to this one in the thread. And the reason why I wanted to do it is because crepe yarn is really on everybody's mind right now, and people are really talking about it. People are talking about cabled yarns, and they're hard yarns to make. And I think if we just, especially the more experienced spinners out there, if they're like, oh yeah, that's easy, I've done that, and just sort of slough them off, we don't recognize the learning curve that goes into making some of these more complex structures. And I think it's really important. It's nice to be able to learn from our spinning. The singles do look very twisted and distinct in the structure, and there must still be a lot of twist energy causing those little kinks and curls here and there. So I think what you're seeing there is that in the burgundy singles, they were probably adequately twisted, but because the twist isn't being matched in the plied part of the yarn, you're seeing all those kinks and twists. I think that's what's going on there. The 2-ply strands are almost parallel to each other, and the crepe ply looks like it could be a touch tighter. I think I should have trusted the math. So questions. Are there tricks to figure out a crepe yarn? In general, is there a good formula for figuring out twist in the singles versus the plied yarn so that the final yarn is balanced? For example, Rachel's ply twist was about 2/3 of her singles twist. This high twist isn't tolerated by some fibers, so it would be handy to know what to aim for. There is an awesome, the back of one of Anne Field's books. It's either the Beginner's Guide to Spinning Wool or Beyond the Basics. I'm pretty sure it's in Spinning Wool Beyond the Basics. I can see it up there on my bookshelf. She, in the back of her book, has these charts that basically tell you how much these fibers should be spun to. Let me grab it because it's right there. So if you want to get more technical, and if you want to get into this stuff, yeah, it's in Beyond the Basics. So it's Spinning Wool Beyond the Basics by Anne Field. She has the crimps per inch in Appendix A, and then in Appendix C, required inches per treadle for twists per inch, the drive ratio on your wheel versus the twist. So there's that. And I know there's similar appendices in her first book, which is Spinning Wool. I think it's called Spinning Wool. Appendix D gives you spinning to match the crimp, which we've talked about in Patreon before. That's a whole other discussion. So if you want to really get into the math, there are definitely resources out there. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the article that was published by Jillian Moreno of Nitty Spin. I'm sure everybody knows who Jillian is, but she wrote a great article that was, I think it's this one. Oh, no, shoot. The one time I don't have it on my phone. I am going to see if I can pull it up really quickly on my phone, so just give me 2 seconds here. Here it is. It was in the summer of 2016, spring and summer 2016, issue 55 of Nitty Spin. And she shows, and I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to show it on the show because Nitty is just an amazing, amazing resource. Amazing. She shows in that article, sorry, all the clicking with the microphone. I know it's annoying. We need to remember that even though we know lots of facts, we still may not be successful on our first attempt at new yarns. We don't like that temporary feeling of incompetence. I wonder if the first crepe was a mistake, like they accidentally made a single spun the wrong way and thought, well, what if I just used it anyway? Yeah, I think that's actually a big part of it. I think we all sort of expect that our first yarns in these really complicated structures are going to be successful, and sometimes they're just not. So I think, so this was the article. So this is what a crepe yarn is supposed to look like, okay? So you see how in the crepe yarn, you've got that singles wrapping around, the orange and the pink. Ignore the one that's over here because that's a cabled yarn, okay? These are the crepe yarns. And then inside, you have those two singles that are plied together and they almost pop out of the yarn. That's what we're looking for with our crepe yarns. If your yarns aren't popping and almost like straining as you're plying, it's not high enough twist. And one of the things that I love the most about some of these visuals is if you break it down like this, the Z spun singles that you use to make your 2-ply, they need to be really over twisted, because when you S-ply them, so you're applying them in the opposite direction, you need enough twist to be able to basically cable together or crepe together, apply together in that Z. Because if you think about it, you're putting a whole bunch of twist going one way in the singles, and then you're putting that together going the other way, but you need double the amount of twist because you're going to go in the opposite direction again. So that's why I say sample, 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 because you're going to be surprised how much twist you needed. Remember when I was working on that Hauser yarn and I was complaining so much about how much twist it took to make that yarn? It's because they need so much twist because you're going in counter directions all the time. So the reason why I think that this yarn is probably it's underspun is because when you look at her, so she has this picture here, and I'll show it to you in just a sec. There's a sample on what will be, so this far side, that one has too much second ply twist. The middle one has a good amount of twist in both of the stages of plying. So the second stage, when you ply the two singles together, and then when you crepe it together in the opposite direction. And then there's the third sample where there's too little twist in the finished ply. So I think this yarn, that's the issue. There's too little twist in the finished ply. And I think if you put this through the wheel one more time in the Z direction, so going in the direction that this was plied, in the Z direction, I think you would probably have really good results. So this yarn looks like this, and I really highly recommend that you go to this article and have a look. And actually, maybe I'll just swap my cameras around and see if I can show this to you on the other camera. These yarns are hard to make. Like, don't get me wrong, they are hard to make. There we go. So you can see how that yarn that's closest to me on the screen, you know, you can see how, just like our example in the spinning growth, it just doesn't look like the singles are, that the two ply underneath is really popping out. Whereas in the middle yarn there, it's really popping. And again, I really recommend that you go and look at this article. It's excellent. I have linked it in the show notes, so you guys will be able to have a look at that. I think it's really important that we remind ourselves that these yarns are not easy to make, and that this is all an opportunity to learn. All right. So because it's 25 after 1, I thought that I would share with you really quickly, and it's all set up, and then we're going to say goodbye. I'm going to skip housekeeping for today because we've had lots of housekeeping recently. And you guys know everything that's going on in the community. We've got the 51 yarn spin along. We're doing True Woolen right now through the month of May. And there's the monthly newsletter to keep you all up to date on all of that. You can go to wellforpearls.com for that information. And like I said, we've just kind of got we're just trucking along with all these different things that we've got going on. So I am going to show you spinning this yarn. So we're going to take just a second to set up. I'm going to go out of the frame a little bit. You're going to hear some bumping and moving as I just shift the microphone a little bit. Hopefully that wasn't too bad for sound. I can still see the live chat. Not really going to be able to see me, but I thought, well, I'll move the camera a little bit and you guys can kind of see me. And then this is going to shift over here, so just bear with me here. Isn't this cool that I had this all set up for you guys? All right, so let's get this onto my wheel. And then I'll show you how I've been spinning this yarn, and then I'll say goodbye. Yeah, I totally agree, Becca. Jillian Moreno is so visual, and you know, she's all about the experience. And I think that you know, it's really important, especially when we're online and we're sharing from all over the world and from such different perspectives. And for some people, like, English is a second language, and you know, all of this stuff. It really helps when we have visual demonstrations. All right, I can't even remember the last time I got on my wheel with you guys. You guys remember? I'm not sure I can remember. Oh, shoot. I put my bobbin on backwards. Okay, bear with me because I put my bobbin on backwards. Which would be totally fine if I was spinning in the Z direction, so going that way, but I'm not. I'm spinning in the S direction, going anti-clockwise for this spin. Oh, that's so cool, Rihanna. So Rihanna got to take her first spinning class with her last November at the Magical Fibre Fantasy Retreat. That's amazing. I bet that was just incredible. Jillian's been on the podcast on Woolen Spinning Radio, and it was such a pleasure to talk to her. She's just such an amazing person. We have some really, really incredible people in the spinning community just in general. This community is just so awesome. All right, let's see if I'm going in the right direction now. Can you guys see okay? Now, I'm going to lift the camera ever so slightly so that you guys can see what my hands are doing. Sorry for the cable and the cords and everything on the floor. That big cable that's on the floor is one of the power cables that I use for the podcast. So all I'm doing is drafting off the top of my finger there. Oh, that's very kind, Mary. I've learned 99% of my spinning from your videos. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. So this is a really, after practicing, it's a very easy way for me to spin. I can spin this way pretty much forever. I spun some Targhee as part of the Sweet Georgia Club a few years ago now. Must have been like 2015. And I spun the entire braid like that. And it was so light and so airy. It was a 3-ply. And I got just an incredible amount of yardage out of it. And it's a great way to put some, get some really good yardage out of a 3-ply from comb top. Because you're adding a little bit of air. You can spin it like this and let go. Obviously, this is, you guys can probably tell by the twist that's building up. This is a very, very high twist yarn. Let me show you. That's pretty high twist. So you can see how much twist is going in there as I'm spinning. Just looking at chat, I love spinning over the fold off the tip woolen. Yeah, it's just such an awesome technique, hey Eve? So I'll finish up this red and then we'll say goodbye. It's always sad to say goodbye, isn't it? It's kind of nice about May. We've got 3 shows that we're doing. So then I fight through these last little fuzzy bits and then I go back to my fiber and I'll get the next bit and I'll keep on spinning. But you can see how it's quite fast too. I mean, that was only a couple of minutes of me spinning through that little bit of fiber. It's pretty incredible how quickly it goes. And I'm glad that I had that set up for you guys so that I was able to share that with you. So I'll just come on over here. This is my Magicraft Susie Pro for those who haven't seen that wheel. And I'm just going to put my camera back so that you guys can actually see me. So thank you so much for being here today. It was another really long show, but I want to say thank you. And thank you for putting up with my cold and my coughing and whatnot. You guys are so gracious. And... oh, why am I spinning S? I can't say. Eve's gonna like hit me. Oh, I cross-lace. Yeah, so before I say goodbye completely, I do cross-lace my flyer, Rihanna, and I've written a blog post about that. And if you guys would like to know more about why I cross-lace, I really only cross-lace my flyer when I'm spinning this fine. And the reason is so that my bobbin fills really evenly, and usually it's because I'm having tension issues and I just can't quite get the right tension on my bobbin. I really need to play around with new break bands and try some different break bands on this wheel. And every time I'm doing a really fine spin like this, because this is going to be a 3-ply like I mentioned, I always think, oh, I got to try some different break bands, and I just haven't gotten to it yet. It's a time issue. So I need to do that because, but I do find in the interim that cross-lacing helps with that tensioning issue because it just puts that little bit of drag. I tend to spin with a lot less uptake than others. Whenever somebody's been working at my wheel and I go to sit down, like if they're demoing something or they want to show me something or I want them to show me something, usually when I go back to sit at my wheel, I have to decrease the uptake because they like a higher uptake than me. It's like 99% of the time. So I find when I cross lace, it just gives me that little bit of drag that I like. And I think, again, it's just the way I spin. It's the way I've always done it. So yeah. New skill to learn and practice, just starting to feel like my long draw is getting better and even. You know, long draw is not an easy draw. I think we make it look very easy, but be patient because it's not a super easy draw to make really consistent. Make sure when you draw back that you're always drawing out the same amount of fiber, and that'll help a lot. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you guys enjoyed seeing me spin. I know it was just a couple minutes, but it's always fun. It is a spinning podcast after all, so I'm going to start to try to work it in a little bit more. All right. You guys are so kind. All right. I hope you have a wonderful couple of weeks. We have a third live stream in May, so if you're a patron, please watch out for that. It will be on the last Wednesday in May. And until then, I hope that my cold is gone. And I hope you all are doing really super well. I hope it's hot and sunny where you are, or at least that you're getting some rain so that you don't get forest fires this summer like we're in for. It's so dry here and so warm that everybody's really worried that we're going to have a really bad summer for forest fires. So that's not good. So thank you, Rihanna, for offering me to feel better. I hope I am. I am feeling better. I actually feel fine. It's just the cough, you know, so it just doesn't make you feel great. All right. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy spinning. Bye, everyone.